Hi, everybody. Welcome to Maker Monday. I'm excited to be here as always. I don't know how to put that into other words other than I am truly always excited to be here. I probably should look up synonyms for excited, but it's just my word. Today, I did an extreme amount of preparation. Anytime it is Chris Bakke solo, I always want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. October has been packed with a lot of fun Maker Mondays. We started off with some Hispanic Heritage Month shout outs, and we threw in a little Halloween with a Monster Mash, and we're ending with Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, and not because of Halloween. In fact, part of the reason I wanted to do this is because when I first was drawn to Dia de los Muertos, it was because of the amazing artwork. It was beautiful, similar to my shirt. And the reason I chose this shirt today is because this is an actual piece of art by Salvador Dali, and I got it at the Dali Museum. So I wanted it to be authentic because often people take Dia de los Muertos or Day of the Dead and just turn it into like Mexican Halloween. And that's not it at all. And it actually becomes offensive. Lots of stuff. There's the question section. So at any point, feel free to type in your questions. Sometimes it takes me a few minutes to look at my computer and answer them, but I will get to them, and we'll spend some time at the end talking a little bit. So feel free to comment or ask questions. Definitely want this to be as active as possible. Share your ideas because other people see them, and we love that. I love that. I also want to let you know that there's a handout. The PowerPoint that I will be going through and showing you, I added it in there, and there's links in there. I had a tremendous amount of help in terms of social media posts. Thanks to Bob Reeker, who absolutely pointed me in the right direction and let me know that what I was doing was a good way for educators to approach Dia de los Muertos. Nancy Walkup from School Arts Magazine shared a tremendous amount of additional resources, and I've got those in there from School Arts Magazine, and that's just such a great tool for teachers. So lots packed, and I probably won't get to it all, but I'm truly excited to share how this all came about and a little bit of my story. But Dia de los Muertos definitely starts on November 1st and November 2nd. So those are the official days. It is truly a Mexican holiday, and it is one that is filled with prayer and remembrance and celebration of those that have been lost. And so that's where I'd like to start, is starting with the fact that art gives you this opportunity to not only do the beautiful pieces of artwork, but also to celebrate a culture, to celebrate customs, and to celebrate people and their stories. And when we talk about Dia de los Muertos, it's really no different than sharing other holidays, whether it is a Jewish holiday, Hanukkah or Yom Kippur, or a Christian holiday, Easter or Christmas. And Christmas has clearly evolved into, not just a Christian holiday. But when you talk about a holiday like that, not everybody celebrates it the same. So I'm just going to throw up CASTLE's framework. CASTLE is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And this wheel that they've created is phenomenal because it takes you through self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. And as you can see, when you go outward, you have the classroom, you have the school, you have family and caregivers, and then you have communities. This is where the cultural part is going to come in. And when we talk about cultural appropriation, it doesn't mean that you can't teach this. It doesn't mean that you can't do the appropriate artwork to go with it. What it means is to do it in a way that is appropriate and in a way that fosters that kind of learning. Benefits, it builds healthy identities. So when we talk about who we are and what our heritage are, that that builds who we are, builds our self-esteem. Better attitudes about themselves, others, in school, and I think that's fantastic. Sometimes we just fear what we don't know, or it's like the song, and gosh darn it, it's the Doors, called "People Are Strange When They Are Strangers." It's true. If you don't know somebody, you form an opinion because that's human nature. And then unless you learn, that opinion is going to stick. And so we teach children and each other how to guard against that, I should say. It fosters community, and that was a perfect segue into that. When you are reaching out, when you are discussing this, when you are, opening our minds to other cultures and customs, it fosters community. It also strengthens communication. It helps children to ask questions and to learn. And sometimes that's hard. And I say that because as an adult, I have recently started to do that when I don't know something. And interestingly enough, in this exact situation, I sort of was using Hispanic and Latino or Latinx and sort of eliminating saying Mexican, thinking that I was being a little bit more appropriate. But the truth is, this is a Mexican holiday, and it is something that originated in Mexico. And while there are certainly people that may celebrate it in other countries or around the world, it truly belongs to the Mexican culture. So it's appropriate to say Mexico or Mexican, because Hispanic is going to include all of Spanish-speaking people. And Latino or Latinx is going to include all of Latin America. And so, so just learning and understanding. It enhances creative thinking because it gets you to think about how somebody else celebrates, how somebody else, what their customs are. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to do them or follow them or agree with them, and that's okay. But at least open our minds that there is somebody else that has a custom or an idea or a belief or a value that is different than our own. And it supports educational equity. What an amazing opportunity for everybody to be able to share their heritage in school and to help us grow that way. And we know that in I'm just going to say it, I'm 55 years old, and we didn't discuss a whole lot of other cultures. And when we did, we didn't always do it appropriately. So I love that a company like Castle helps us to look at how to do things appropriately, and also gives a framework to do it in a healthy and safe environment. And I love that about art educators, because the art room is really that safe space. It's that spot where you know that you will be listened to. And maybe some of this might even be difficult to discuss, because it does talk about death. It talks about death in a really celebratory way, though. And so as we talk about cultural appropriation, I'll just show my next slide. And it was a circumstance for me that went really well and it could have gone the other way. So in the, there's two pictures there. The first picture is me dressed up like Frida, and with me is Elizabeth Carrion. Elizabeth is my coworker at Nasco, who is Mexican. And the second picture is me and my mom, and I'm cracking up because my mom and dad are going to actually make an appearance in this webinar. So this is my mother, and she lives in a nursing home in Janesville, and she was the queen of Halloween. And so I dressed up as a Day of the Dead skull, and that was sort of where my thinking was at that moment. And I did it well. My niece Emma Shaw did my makeup for me, but I went over to visit my mom to show her, you know, how cool I looked. The interesting story about that, though, is Elizabeth is Mexican, and her family does celebrate Dia de los Muertos, and she could have been really offended that I was dressing up like this for Halloween. Instead, she was really excited. In fact, it was awesome for me because Elizabeth was like, Katrina, and I was like, I don't know who Katrina is, and completely was like, she took pictures of me and she thought it was so cool. I was happy because she was like one of the only people who like was getting it. And part of my motivation was I just always like to dress in a costume for Halloween that art teachers will get and understand and relate to. So it's sort of like, you know, I just want to show Nasco that I'm the art girl, and so I'm going to dress sort of arty. And that was my motivation. It certainly wasn't to make fun of or be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form. In hindsight, I don't know that I would dress that way anymore, or if I did, I would at least continue to talk about it and share a little bit more of the story. And so this part, the culture, community, and customs, is part of that SEL learning where you are talking about people's culture, their community, and their customs, and bringing it into the community of the classroom and the school so that then that can be shared out. And so I'm really grateful to Elizabeth, who also shared some of her customs. Ruby McGowan, also a coworker of mine, shared some of her customs, and Star Rodriguez also shared with me. In fact, it was interesting too, because Star shared that her mom actually died on Dia de los Muertos, and so now it holds even more sentiment to her. So my next slide is one Elizabeth shared, that there are some people that will actually extend Dia de los Muertos for an entire week. And so this is all in Spanish, but I will kind of give you the gist of it. October 28th is when you would light the first candle, and you know, they build amazing altars and ofrendas. And ofrendas is an offering. And so on the altar is the picture of who you are celebrating. There's flower petals, and we'll talk more about that. But the first day you light a white candle, and you have a white flower, and you might celebrate any lost animals, so any of your lost pets, things like that. And we all know that people love, and certainly when their dog or their cat or their pet dies, it's part of their family. The 29th is a day where they are going to honor the abandoned and forgotten. That's then when they would put a glass of water on the altar. October 30th is another candle, water and bread. And this day they're celebrating those who may have been lost in an accident or tragedy, and for those who die hungry. On October 31st it's the candle, water, bread, and then you add fruit, and it's for grandparents, great-grandparents, and great-great-grandparents. And so, their rich history begins to unfold. November 1st is actually, the 1st and the 2nd is when the majority of Mexicans celebrate. And it is also known as All Saints Day. And so in the Catholic religion, All Saints Day is celebrated, and the two sort of became meshed. And on the first day, it's dedicated to children who have died, but all the food is placed on there. And so often in a family, you would put the food that your loved one really enjoyed, so maybe they're just, there was just one thing that maybe their grandma made, and it's like her enchilada recipe was the best ever. And so they might put that on the altar on their ofrenda. And then the next day is the 2nd, and that is all adults. And that is when everybody comes and they eat and they drink, and they remember and they celebrate. And it isn't a day of mourning like often is associated with death. It is happy, and they use petals from marigolds that line the streets and are in people's homes. And there are a couple, there is a lot of information on YouTube, but there's a couple things, a couple videos that just show different, I believe they're called states in Mexico, and I think there's 32 of them, where different states have done just lined the streets with petals and flowers, and you sort of walk through the maze to get to where you're going. And a lot of people actually celebrate right at the grave. And then on November 3rd is the last candle is lit, and incense is burned, and the souls of the dead are said to say goodbye, and we ask them to return when the ofrenda or the offering is raised again. And so that shows sort of an extended version. And again, it's one of those things where if you know somebody, talk to them about it and ask them how they celebrate it. There might be lots of ways. Ruby shared that when she went to, that she left Mexico when she was very young to come to the United States. And when they came to the United States, they didn't continue to celebrate because their graves that they would go to were in Mexico. It's not like you can bring them with you. So they celebrated within their home, but they didn't actually go to the graveyard. But there's lots of people who do actually go to the graveyard. I'm going to share some of the art that I did in the making of and in the studying of this lesson plan. First, I'm going to just talk about the Calvera. It is, what we would know as sort of the skull, or the skeleton. And so this was done by my first grader Ayla, who's 6 years old, and I just sort of did the outline for her, and then she started coloring it in, and sort of anything I did she was doing too, although I gotta say she got really into it and was using a lot of colors. Just to give your students some sort of outline to start with, I will tell you the grade level that you're at is going to really help you as well. Let me check too to see where we're at. Thank you on loving my shirt. Do they dress up in any way? Thank you very much for that question, because the answer is yes. Some families will dress up in sort of the skeleton face. It's called the Calvera or Katrina, and it's celebrating. It's showing that these are the people that have gone on and are no longer with us in flesh. And so that's why you show the bones. Some just wear, you know, like party clothes. And so depending on your family and what you do, some do dress up that way. Always welcome for the PowerPoint. I've come to learn that y'all love your handouts. So I'm working on doing that better. So that is where sort of the whole skull thing came in. I also created some paper mache skulls. And the reason is because I did want to try to do some things that I thought students could do at home. And so you start with a balloon, and seriously, flour, water, and newspaper. I just had newspapers cut in squares that I was doing some painted paper with. So I got real lucky. I had a whole box of newspaper squares and dipped them in the flour and water. And the thickness, I would suggest not as thick as pancake batter, but you definitely don't want it watery either, because you want it to be able to be hard. In fact, this is how you would make a piñata as well. So I just thought with the balloon and the flour and the water and the newspaper, kids could potentially do this at home if they were in a virtual setting. And then it's just decorating it. And decorating it, you know, I used some adhesive foam, and we use, you can see some behind us. And it's a good thing they're that far, because I did these with first grade and under, so like 3 to 6. Yeah, it was fabulous when the 3-year-old takes his hand like this and claps it after dipping it in the flour and the water. And it wasn't at my house, it was at his. So flour and water all over the place. So just so you know, good news is it cleans up really well. So that was, so they look way better as a distance piece, but it was super fun. And you could actually use them as a piñata. Honestly, I read nothing and I heard nothing from all the folks that I spoke to in regards to Dia de los Muertos that they do piñatas. It's not part of their celebration. So I was just moshing 2 different pieces of art together just to make it fun, and because it lended itself to that. The other thing though was while we were cutting out the petals for sort of an ofrenda, and I think this is a fabulous opportunity for students to really get the true feel for this culture. This is a presentation board by Flipside, not very expensive, and obviously it opens up and then it's easily set up. The picture, extremely important. The picture is the remembering, and I did put a clip of Coco in the handouts only because Elizabeth said, "Did you see the movie Coco? It really does explain it well." And I know Disney spent a lot of time researching as well. And honestly, that was where it started to resonate with me as well. I love how they show like the petals in the movie. Just the animation of that is phenomenal. So I started the altar, or my ofrenda, with the petals around here. And then I didn't put a huge amount of art into it, only because I also wanted to share in a classroom setting. You could easily do this with just crayons, markers, glue, and a picture. This happens to be my dad, who has been gone for about 3 years. And so that is the person I chose to celebrate. Also too, because he's a lot like me, he loved attention, and so he'd think this is pretty cool. So like you would just be able to decorate it, and I might add some words on here like His name is John. He was my dad. He clearly was my mother's husband. He was a brother. I could maybe add some more things, but I was celebrating him because he loves the Green Bay Packers. Originally from Wisconsin, he was a Marine, which is why I put the few and the proud. This is a picture of him in his, they call them dungarees. I also wrote the word family on here because I am 6 of 6, so we had a big family. He was the third of 6 in his family. I put music on here because he thought he sang good. No, he actually did. But also too, he was hilarious. And so I put ha ha ha, knock knock. I wrote too late, shake the elbow, because he would go to shake your hand, and the minute you reached your hand out, he would throw out his elbow. So that is sort of how I would make my ofrenda. And I would say in a classroom situation, be prepared that students are going to want to talk about somebody, but also it might unleash some emotion. With my granddaughter, you know, as we talked about people who have gone to heaven, she got sad. And so be prepared for that. And so, you know, honestly, you'll know better than I do, but the emotion part of it is, again, that social and emotional learning, and how to, you know, how to manage those emotions appropriately. I have the candle and the bread. And again, there is some recipes for making Mexican bread that I considered adding, and then I changed my mind because I went to the Mexican grocery store in my town, and I knew that they had the candle. So I thought, well, I'm going to buy a candle to show that, you know, candles are lit. And often there's different saints on them. And there's one in the back of me that actually has the Dia de los Muertos, like skull saint. Was real scary looking, so I stuck with this one. But I asked, I said, hey, I am teaching about Dia de los Muertos, and instead of just putting out a piece of Wonder Bread, I thought would be offensive, what's the official bread I should put out? And so they shared, and I think there's probably, again, choices and options, but it's nice to talk to people that say, what did you put out? On the one day, you would have lots of food, and if you watch Coco, you do see that. And there's some other really great videos. There was a great conversation on the online art teacher group, online art teachers K through 12 on social media, Facebook, that talked about Dia de los Muertos. And so people gave a bunch of different articles. I have attached some articles in here. In here, that would be in your computer. Like, that makes no sense, does it? But you know what I mean, in the handout that talks about different things. So again, research, but don't let your research just be the internet. Don't let it just be a book. Make sure to have human contact in there. I think that is so super important when you're doing this particular holiday. I don't want to say this particular art because the art is a byproduct of the holiday, but I also don't want you to not do the art, because the art is beautiful, and it's a great way to have this segue into this conversation. Next question. Oh, we dedicated our Days of the Dead performances to the Mexican artists Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. Recognizing artists may be more acceptable than asking students to honor someone who has died. fantastic, and I'm super glad, because I actually was going to say that, because sometimes it does hurt to talk about somebody that you have lost. There were moments in time where it probably was too soon to share that my dad had died. I mean, the truth is he died at 88 years old, and he lived an amazing life. And so I'm so lucky and so blessed, but so hard, right? Death, it evokes sadness and emotion in us. So yes, I also had an art teacher in Florida, Heather Hagee. I believe she has a YouTube site. Ugh, of course, I can't remember it, but she often gave students the opportunity to choose somebody who has died that maybe had an impact on it. I like that you chose Mexican artists because it pays honor to the Mexican culture. I think that's a great thing. You could even have it be, just a wide variety of things, but definitely be prepared, and that might be a way to start. And maybe if they want to do somebody that they know, you can do that as well. One of the other artworks that I had done, and I started to talk about this, and I think I sidebarred, because welcome to Chris Baki's line of thinking. But while Ayla and I were cutting out the petals for the altar, all of a sudden it started reminding me of the cutout papers that you often see that are hanging in Mexico. I created several, and these are obviously not any kind of Mexican design or any kind of awesome ornate anything, but I liked the fact that I could use, and I maybe do the overhead, I liked the idea that you could use a scalloped scissor or one of those just fancy shaped scissors to get a little bit more of that decorative edge. I wish I had the time to look up, because I just kept trying different stuff. And, I would be like, I kind of like that. But I think you could really do some really amazing paper cuts. And if you researched how to really plan what you're going to cut, because if you ever look up this style of art, it's incredible what they cut, the amazing ornate stuff. But I tried to use really bright colors, and then I just honestly I strung it on a piece of yarn and hung it right across the shelves. And I mean, even though it's not super official, it gives the idea, and it adds that element of how extravagant this holiday is, and the amount of time that they put into it, decorating the streets and the petals. Let me check a couple more questions here. There are some really great books too that are there, and I ran out of time to make any suggestions. So if you have any ideas, feel free to put them in there. Somebody said that the link isn't working, and I apparently am going to need some help on that, because this is the second time that the links aren't working. And I promise you, when I hyperlinked them, I even checked it, and it worked on my computer. So I must be doing something wrong in the PowerPoint presentation. I apologize. In about an hour after the webinar ends, you will receive a follow-up email. Feel free to respond to that. And if there's something specific that you want, reach out to me. Also in the PowerPoint is my Nasco email, and I'm happy to answer any questions there, or send you any additional links. Nancy shared that She also had students do, or knew a teacher that had students who did do pets. But I mean, that could be hard too, because, you know, we do get really attached to our pets. But I think that there are lots of ways to talk about it. But having that conversation about the fact of why they do this, that it is not Mexican Halloween. Like that's the part where it becomes offensive, because you're not giving them, you're not sharing the meaning behind it, which is so important to the culture. Let's see. Uncle Monarch is a great book about a monarch butterfly migration. And the Day of the Dead. Oh, thank you so much from Robbins. Thank you very much for that. The migration part is beautiful too. I know Fabiana Rodriguez does uses a monarch to talk about migration, and clearly that makes sense in the United States culture too, because that's an opportunity to talk about that. Love that. Thank you so much. Recognizing artists may be more acceptable than asking students to honor someone they know who has died. I think that's true. I think that's a true statement too. And it's one that I think you might want to have a conversation with the principal to let parents know ahead of time, or a counselor. Age appropriate, you are going to have to consider. You might have to consider the environment that you are in. Occasionally, just knowing somebody's personal story of their loss might prevent you from doing this, because the whole point of these conversations is building community, talking about customs and culture, but it's also centered around respect and kindness, and allowing people allowing students the space they need, and the you know, to be able to communicate who they are. And so the appropriate part of it can be touchy and can be sensitive. And so if there's anybody that doesn't feel comfortable, it probably isn't worth doing. It's probably something that you just need to consider, because you have to know, you have to be aware of your circumstances, your class, and your students. Would you touch on cultural appropriation and how to do this respectfully? Yeah, I will, because it's a conversation that I've had a lot about, and I'm not sure I still have it right. But the thing that I liked the most in reading about appropriation is intent. Is intent, if the intent is the outcome, the art, it's probably not appropriate. But if the intent is to educate about the culture, is about to share human experience in a kind and respectful way, then I think that it is appropriate. But again, you want to consider your circumstances. Absolutely, positively, if you have students who are Mexican, bring them into the conversation from the beginning to see how they feel about it, and to see if they're willing to share, if they want to share, if there's people in your community or in the school, other teachers, principal, workers, you know, I mean, even if it's somebody that is, you know, working in food service, or somebody that is an aide, or an other school worker, like, that's the beauty, is that you would be connecting humans, and understanding and respecting that. And so when you are creating, you're creating with the meaning and the understanding of the culture. And I think that's the part that is how to do it appropriately. Anytime you're doing something that is offensive to somebody, stop. But I think that's the point where you have the conversation to say, when is this appropriate? And there might be somebody that says it's never appropriate. Elizabeth could have had a completely different reaction when I dressed up that Halloween as Katrina. I was lucky that it didn't offend her. I was lucky that she looked at it as me honoring her culture. And I'm glad that she did, because I was honoring it in a way that I knew that it was important to art teachers. And so I was connecting with the people I serve, but it was the wrong group of people. I should have been honoring Mexican art teachers and Mexican heritage. And so knowing and learning, and that is how we learn. And sometimes we learn in a harder way. Hopefully that helps. I would discuss it with other art teachers. I would run it by other people. I would even run it by like the school counselor. If you have somebody on staff that has SEL knowledge, that is a good way. Castle is a great tool to get more information and have some of those conversations and checking with folks there. I'm not saying that this is the end all in how to do it appropriately. This is how I went about it. And based on the humans that I talked to, I felt like I was doing it in a way that honored them and that showed them respect. And so that is what I would hope that you would do as teachers. As it applies to when you're making the art, like when I was making my altar to my dad, it's going to, other than the petals around it, it's going to have a very Wisconsin flair to it, because my dad was from Wisconsin, I'm from Wisconsin, we lived in Wisconsin, and so it's going to look like that. I could put like an accent of Mexican culture on there, but it might not make sense because I'm honoring my dad. And so I think there's just this balance on how you do things. Let me look to see if there's other questions. I would use the word ofrenda rather than altar. And you know what? I have been. But yesterday, when I was getting the bread, I said ofrenda, and he corrected me and said altar. So then I was thinking, okay, ofrenda is the offering, but in Coco, they speak of the whole altar as the ofrenda. And so that's where I second guessed myself. So again, it is talking to somebody and saying, am I saying it correctly? Are these interchangeable, or are they two different things? What is done with the food offerings after the Day of the Dead is over? Do you know from research? Curious. Vivian, great question. And I do know part of it is you eat it. You actually do celebrate it. So you set it all up, and then as you're celebrating, everybody comes and they celebrate and they eat and they enjoy. And I think that is on the second day, not the first day. Or it is given out. I didn't see anything that where people throw stuff away. It sounds to me like the food gets eaten, or it is shared with other families. And so that's another really fun part of it too. Again, you would be eating food that is honoring. And obviously, I have had more than just my dad die in my family. I've had grandpa and grandmas, aunts and uncles, cousins, lots of people. So, so your ofrenda can have many pictures. In fact, that's a really cool part of Coco is all of these families. So when he happens to end up in the realm of the Day of the Dead, he's recognizing who they are by their skeleton face because he's been looking at them his lifetime and he recognizes who they are. Let's see, any other questions? Not at this moment. We have about 15 minutes left. I do want to say thank you to Nancy from School Arts. She made me a very cool Dia de los Muertos mask. And this is where sometimes too, like to me, I would love to wear this. And when somebody compliments me on it, then I share like, boy, if you don't know, check out what this holiday is all about. It's really amazing. And again, you may have some issues in terms of, well, that's not my religion, or I'm not religious, or I don't believe that way, or I don't do that. And it is okay. It's okay for us not to believe the same way that somebody else believes, but it's human kindness to allow them to believe that way and to want to get to know who they are and why they believe what they believe and what it means to them. And it's amazing how it does open your mind and gives you a little bit greater knowledge of your community and how people do things differently. And to me, I feel like it enhances me as a person. And so while I will absolutely think about utilizing it in a Halloween situation, as it applies to like apparel or the mask or art, absolutely. I am drawn to it from the time that I have seen it. The bright colors and the flowers and just the idea that you celebrate life even after somebody is gone. I think that's super cool. Also, too, before I forget, like I said, in an hour, you'll receive a follow-up email that has a PD certificate that you can download. It will also have a link to this video. Please feel free to share it with anybody that you would like to. And it will have a survey. And so your comments in that survey helps me to continue to do these webinars and gives me ideas of what you want to see and what you want to learn. It also helps us in terms of how you're doing teaching and what you're doing teaching. So last week I was giving away Sharpie gel pens. I can't give everybody a set of the Prismacolor colored markers, but it can be the door prize. So if you fill out the survey, we'll put all the names in that filled out the survey and somebody will win this very gently used survey. The survey will come in the follow-up email. And so, so don't look for it right away. I like it to come with the email where you get the PD certificate, the link, and the survey. So look for it there and answer. And I will send you an email if you are the winner. And when I say gently use, I just mean I used them while we were sitting here just to, share and to demonstrate. Do we have any other questions at this time? Is there a short prayer that is used for this holiday? That is a great question. I don't know. I did not see one, and now I wished I would have researched that. I'm guessing that there is. And I only guess that because it is, it's sort of mixed with All Saints Day, which is a Catholic religion. So I'm guessing that there is prayer that is associated with it, which is phenomenal. So I would suggest researching it. And again, reach out to somebody. And you guys now more than ever, because with social distancing and with people staying safe at home, and to call somebody, to reach out to somebody. And sometimes it feels uncomfortable. Michelle Augusto is the fine arts director from Buffalo Schools, and I think I've name dropped her many times. She has become a friend, and because of her cultural background, she becomes a safe friend that I can say, am I saying this right? Elizabeth is a safe friend. Elizabeth said to me, Chris, you say Hispanic and Latino or Latinx. This is Mexican. Like, this is a Mexican holiday. So you can say Mexican. And that's how we learn. And imagine when somebody asks you about your background and your culture or your religion or something that you're super passionate about, like you like to talk about it and it feels good. So I would absolutely say to reach out to somebody about those prayers. Will the PD certificates have our name on them? Yes, I believe they do. I believe it gets populated with your name. I've added 1 hour in the title so that the title says 1 hour, so you have the time on it. If you have any problems with that, email me. In case you didn't know, that's the universal sign for email me, and I would be happy to recreate it or help you with that. Other questions? We have just a few more minutes. Next week is already November. And do they get a day off from school? Haha. You know what? I don't know, but maybe they do. It would make sense if it's a Mexican holiday. I mean, there's so many holidays we get off, so possibly. Good question, though. Next week is November already. And November, we contemplated, do we take a break? Are you tired of the webinars? But the last survey said, keep doing these. So I'm going to continue to do some. I'm going to bring in some artists and some people associated with art that are doing some really fun things. I also am going to start the month with something called Chris's Top 10 All I Need. And if you ever saw the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin, it's hilarious. At one point, he's leaving his wife and he's just saying, all I need is this. And then, of course, it's and this, and this, and this. And it reminded me of, art teachers, if you say, what's the one art material you need? They would say, oh gosh, all I need is this Prismacolor marker and a set of watercolors and this. And so I just want to tell you what my top 10 favorite art materials are. Gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit about what you can do with them and some lessons that go with it, and just get you thinking about materials that maybe you've seen before, maybe you haven't. I would love to know the all you need art materials that you have to have, that you wouldn't want to live without, even if it's just in your personal artwork. Love conversations like that. Another quick statement, I use Model Magic or any air dry to create the sugar skulls. My students loved it. I agree, because I did that. Nancy shared in the School Arts Magazine additional resources, a Model Magic sugar skull where you get to just put all kinds of fun embellishments in it. And it was delightful. It dried really nice. It could make a great ornament or glue a magnet on the back. Really cool. But yeah, that was a super fun. And she added quite a few additional lesson plans in there. So if anybody's wondering if there's a lesson plan for anything that I showed, there's not, because that was pretty basic stuff. But Nancy gave lots of lesson plans. So thank you so much for that that tip, because that helped me to remind you about the additional resources. So keep coming back, because I love serving you and I love these conversations. If I'm wrong about anything that you heard, I am absolutely open to correction. In fact, that's what makes us better. We've done lesson plans before that weren't appropriate, that somebody made a mistake and somebody from that culture knew and shared with us and helped us. So we're always willing to do better and to be better. But thank you very, very much. You'll get about 4 minutes back of your life, and just hopefully you'll use it to investigate a little bit more about this amazing holiday and this amazing heritage. Stay safe, be happy, and keep teaching art, everybody.